He was used to getting what he wanted. Fast. Without questions. So when a young salesgirl took too long wrapping his gift, he snapped. What he didn't expect was the moment her manager fired her. And what he did next would shock everyone watching. The store was packed that evening. It was December 23rd, and the luxury mall sparkled with lights, music, and shoppers rushing to grab last-minute gifts. Julian Wexler, CEO, billionaire, and famous for his sharp suits and sharper tongue, walked into the store with the usual air of someone who didn't need help but demanded perfection. He was buying a necklace. Not for love, not for family. Just business. A client's wife's birthday. Another polished favor in a world of power moves and handshakes. At the counter stood a young woman with tired eyes and a red bow clipped into her hair. Her name tag read Leah. She was folding a small box with shaking hands. Julian tapped his fingers on the glass. "I don't have all day." "I'm so sorry, sir," she said quickly. "It'll just be a moment." "The ribbon's a bit, then skip the ribbon," he snapped. "You people move slower than my investors in a recession." Leah's cheeks flushed. Still, she kept her head down and kept folding. "Of course, sir." Julian sighed dramatically, then pulled out his phone. A manager appeared within seconds, hearing the raised voice. He stepped beside Leah and looked at Julian. "Is everything all right, Mr. Wexler?" "No," Julian said sharply, not looking up. "She's been fumbling with a box for 3 minutes. I could have built the factory myself by now." The manager turned to Leah. His voice dropped. "You're done for today." She blinked. "What?" He pulled her aside, but his whisper wasn't quiet enough. "Go. You've embarrassed this store enough." But Leah's voice trembled. "That's my last shift before Christmas. I need—" Julian looked up then. She stood there holding a half-wrapped box, eyes wide with shock, lips parted in disbelief. And for a reason he couldn't explain, something shifted inside him. She looked broken, not defiant. Not angry, just tired. Defeated. Humiliated. In front of customers. In front of him. It should have been routine. He'd scolded plenty of workers before. Sent emails that made interns cry. But this felt different. She turned to leave, slipping off her name tag with shaky fingers. She reached under the counter, pulled out her coat, and whispered, "I'm sorry," before walking toward the back door, and Julian just stood there. The box sat unfinished on the counter. The necklace inside gleamed, but the moment felt wrong. He paid. Quietly. No eye contact. No sarcasm. Then he walked out into the winter night, the bag heavy in his hand. But not as heavy as the silence echoing in his chest. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her eyes. The way she didn't defend herself. The way she left without asking for fairness. By morning, something inside him had cracked open, and Julian Wexler, man of numbers, speed, and power, decided to do something completely unplanned. Something unthinkable. Julian Wexler didn't make apologies. Not to his board, not to the press, not to anyone. His world was cold steel elevators, backlit boardrooms, and voices that trembled when he entered. But that morning, as he stared out the window of his 40th floor penthouse, sipping coffee he didn't taste, he realized something strange. He regretted what he'd done, not because he was called out. No one had said a word. The world kept turning, emails kept arriving, meetings were still scheduled. But the image of that girl, Leah, pulling off her name tag with hands that shook, cheeks burning, eyes full of quiet defeat, it kept replaying. Over and over. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. Maybe because she didn't argue. Maybe because he could tell she needed the job. Or maybe, just maybe, because she reminded him of someone he hadn't thought about in years. His sister, Mia. She used to work 2 jobs in college. One at a bookstore, one at a bakery. She once came home crying after a customer yelled at her for getting the wrong pastry. Julian had told her to forget it, that people were stupid. But she'd said something he never forgot. Sometimes, when people are tired, they just need someone to be kind. At the time, he'd rolled his eyes. Now, those words wouldn't leave him alone. Julian put down his mug and grabbed his coat. He didn't call his driver. He walked through streets still crusted with snow. Past bakeries opening for the day. Toward the mall where holiday music was already echoing through tall glass ceilings, the same store. Same polished floors. Same scent of expensive perfume, the same manager behind the counter. Julian didn't wait for greetings. "Where's Leah?" he asked. The man blinked. "Sir? The girl you fired yesterday." The manager cleared his throat. "She was seasonal. We had to make adjustments. Customer complaints, low efficiency, I want her back," Julian said flatly. The manager paused. "I don't believe that's your call, Mr. Wexler." Julian's voice dropped to a quiet sharpness. "Then find someone whose call it is. I'll wait." The manager left. 15 minutes later, Julian had the store owner on the phone. "I'll pay triple what she was earning," he said. "And if she's not back by tomorrow, I'll make sure your entire fourth quarter evaporates." That was all it took. Money moved mountains, but Julian didn't stop there. He spent the afternoon looking for her. No one had her number. No one knew where she lived. Just a name. A short file. An emergency contact with no response. He left the mall, frustrated. But something in him refused to let it go. That evening, he sat in the back of a cafe near the park. A small place with foggy windows and warm lights. And that's when he saw her. Leah, sitting alone at a corner table, coat too thin, sipping tea with both hands like she needed it to stay upright. Her hair was messy now. Her eyes darker. She stared out the window with a stillness that didn't belong to someone her age. Julian hesitated, then approached her table. She looked up, confused. "You," she said softly. "What are you doing here?" He sat across from her slowly. "I came to apologize." She blinked. "Why?" "I was wrong," he said. "I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. And I shouldn't have let him fire you." Leah laughed once, short and bitter. "You didn't let him. You made it easy for him." Julian nodded. "I know." They sat in silence. Outside, the snow began falling again. "I'm not looking for a payout," she said. "If that's why you're here?" "I didn't think you were," he replied. She sipped her tea. "I worked double shifts all week. My mom's been sick. I was just trying to get through the day." Julian's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "I had your job reinstated. With a raise." She stared at it but didn't touch it. "I don't want your charity," she whispered. "It's not charity," he said. "It's a door." Leah finally looked at him. Her eyes weren't angry anymore. Just tired. "Why are you doing this?" He thought about it for a moment, then said the only true thing he could, "Because once, a long time ago, someone I loved was treated like you were. And I didn't do anything then. But maybe I can now." Her face softened. The snow outside blurred the world beyond the window. Julian stood to leave. "Whether you take it or not is up to you. But for what it's worth, I'm not that man anymore." She watched him go, the envelope sitting untouched on the table. But later, when the cafe closed and the lights dimmed, she picked it up and her hands didn't shake this time. The envelope sat on her dresser all night. Leah didn't open it, not because she didn't want to know what was inside, but because she didn't know what she was supposed to feel. Gratitude? Anger? Relief? She was tired of all three. She stared at it between shifts, between checking her mother's breathing, between microwaved soup and quiet breakdowns in the bathroom. Her world had never known men like Julian Wexler. The people she dealt with were loud, impatient, and often invisible the moment she clocked out. But he came back. Twice. And though it didn't erase what had happened, it meant something. Maybe not everything, but something. The next morning, Leah finally opened the envelope. Inside wasn't a check. It was a job offer, permanent position, full benefits, and triple the pay. But more than that, there was a handwritten note tucked behind the paper. 5 words in neat black ink, no ribbon needed this time. She stared at the note for a long time, smiling without meaning to. It was the smallest apology she had ever received, and somehow it was the most honest one too. When she returned to the store, her manager was different. Not softer, not suddenly kind, but careful. Controlled. He didn't look her in the eye, and the words "welcome back" nearly got stuck in his throat. But he said them. That was enough. Her coworkers stared, whispered, then tried to be friendly in the way people do when they're curious but too nervous to ask questions. Leah didn't offer answers. She just tied her apron, took her spot behind the counter, and went back to doing what she did best, helping people quietly and precisely with or without appreciation. Julian didn't return to the store that week, or the next. He didn't need to. His assistant delivered updates, confirmed the raise, ensured the paperwork had gone through. But he thought about her. Often. He remembered how steady her hands had been even as she unraveled. He remembered her voice, small but strong. She was the first person in years who had made him feel like a man, not a brand. And that unsettled him in a way no investor or market crash ever had. One day, on impulse, Julian walked into the store again. Leah was behind the counter, carefully wrapping a necklace for a little girl shopping with her grandmother. He didn't say anything at first. Just watched. The bow was perfect. The fold clean. The little girl clapped her hands when she saw it, and Leah smiled, handing her the box like it was treasure. Julian didn't speak until the customer left. "You're really good at that," he said. Leah didn't look surprised. "Most people don't notice," she replied. "They just want it done fast." "I noticed," Julian said. "Too late." "But I did." She didn't offer a warm smile or dramatic forgiveness. Just a quiet nod, the kind that said, "We're not there yet, but maybe someday." They began to see each other after that. Not romantically, not at first. But something steadier. They met for coffee on Tuesdays, not always planned. He'd show up at the cafe near her apartment, or she'd find herself walking past his building just as he was coming down. They talked about small things. Big things. She told him about her mom's heart condition. He told her about growing up in silence, raised by nannies and calendars. Sometimes they argued. She didn't flatter him. He didn't try to impress her. And somewhere in between late-night texts and coffee cup laughs, they started to matter to each other. One night, Leah's mother had a health scare. The ambulance came, and Leah rode along, gripping her mom's hand the whole way. She texted Julian without thinking, not even sure he'd respond. But he showed up at the hospital before the doctor even came in with results. He sat beside her in the waiting room, bought her water, and said nothing, just stayed. When the doctor finally emerged and said her mother would be fine, Leah let out a shaky breath and leaned against Julian's shoulder. He didn't move. He just rested his head lightly against hers and whispered, "I've got you." The next morning, there were fresh groceries on Leah's porch. A new heater arrived 2 days later. She never asked if it was him, and he never said it was. But they both knew. Months passed. Seasons changed. The job at the store evolved. Leah was promoted to lead customer care. Her shifts were more flexible. Her team respected her now, not because of who she knew, but because of how she worked. Julian, meanwhile, started changing things too. He implemented new company-wide policies across his firm's employee kindness training, wellness checks, anonymous feedback systems. His board raised eyebrows. But the stock rose. So no one questioned it for long. Eventually, the rumors started about the billionaire seen walking with a salesgirl in the park, about the man who paused meetings to answer personal calls, about how Julian Wexler, the most unreachable man in finance, had started smiling more. It was true, because Julian had found something he didn't know he was missing, someone who didn't see his money, only his heart. Someone who challenged him, softened him, and still somehow made him feel stronger. One evening, as spring arrived and the city bloomed, Julian brought Leah back to the very store where they had first met. It was closed for the night, lights dimmed, the counter silent. But in the center of the space stood a small glass display. Inside it was a necklace, plain, delicate. The one he'd bought the day he yelled at her. He turned to her. "I kept it," he said. Leah looked at the display. Then at him. "Why?" "Because it's the moment everything changed." She touched the glass, then looked up at him with a quiet smile. "I don't need a necklace," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I needed to show you I remember." They stood in the silence for a while. Not the awkward kind. The kind that feels like a promise. Julian reached into his coat, pulled out a small box, this one perfectly wrapped, ribbon and all. She raised an eyebrow. You didn't do that. I did, he said. Watched 5 tutorials. She laughed softly. He opened the box and inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. I don't want to fix your life, he said. I just want to be in it. As your partner. As your safe place. As someone who never forgets the girl who wrapped the gift I never deserved. Leah didn't cry. She didn't gasp or cover her mouth. She just looked at him and said yes. And that was enough. Years later, people still whispered about the salesgirl who married the billionaire. About how it started with a ribbon. About how she'd once been fired on the floor of the same store she ended up co-owning, but Leah never told the story for attention. She told it to remind people that one act of cruelty can be undone by 2 acts of courage. That power means nothing without grace. And that sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who show us who we're meant to be. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional storytelling. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories begin with the smallest mistake and a chance to make it right.